Look at that. I have presented a question. So Josh, a friend of the program, asks, what is the best time zone for college football fans to reside in? This led to a shockingly spirited debate today. And I'm telling you, I fancy myself as sort of a chameleon when it comes to this sort of thing. So I don't think there's a wrong answer. And full disclosure, I believe I would thrive in any of these environments. But we had a lot of East Coast flavor early on. The Eastern time zone is what I grew up in. I live in Central now. But the pro there is you can get things done in the morning. So think about your college football Saturday. If you're in the Eastern time zone, the first game's not kicking off until high noon. The entire structure of the day is formatted on Eastern time. So the first game kicks off at high noon. I used to be able to go to the gym and do things around town in the morning before getting back home for those noon kickoffs. That's the pro. The con is you have to be a borderline serial killer to be able to stay up late enough to watch the conclusion of all the West Coast games. Some of those things don't wrap up till 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And if you're going full degenerate gambler mode and you're letting it all ride on Hawaii, then it could be sunrise before you finally have hit pillow at night. But then you go over to the Central time zone, where I live now, and I prefer the Central time zone to the Eastern time zone. I like what we have here because it's the same thing pretty much as Eastern. Like if you get out of bed early enough, you can still get stuff done in the morning, but everything just seems to make you not wait as long. I cannot describe to you in thorough enough emphasis how different it is only having to wait to 2:30 than having to wait to 3:30. Or a game starting at 6:30 instead of 7:30. It makes all the difference in the world. And so you get an hour on the back end of your day, so hopefully things are ending at midnight instead of 1 or 2. Central is better to me than Eastern, although I have lived in both and I have managed. But then you get to the Mountain time zone. One of you was emphatic in your suggestion that this is the best time zone because it gave you essentially flexibility on both ends of the social spectrum. So if you're one that wants to go out a little bit later, if you can afford to sacrifice the late games, your day is free by like 4 or 5. But even if you want a piece of the night games, they're wrapping up before midnight. They're wrapping up by 11:15, but also the early games start at 10 a.m., which means you have sort of that in-between mode there, but you have, for the early risers, enough time to do stuff. But also, if you just prefer to wake up and let college football be your alarm clock, you can get straight out of bed, sleep in, and then 9:30, get your quick breakfast, boom. 10 a.m., the noon kickoffs are happening on the East Coast. But I was doing radio in Portland this morning. Well, it was early morning for them. It was later morning for me. And they sold me pretty significantly on the West Coast lifestyle. Now, that is a 9 a.m. kickoff for the first window of games. And that's a turnoff for a lot of people, and certainly it would take some adjusting. But I'm up early anyway. What appeals to me is the back end. What appeals to me is having things done by 9 or 10 o'clock, somewhere in that range. But also, if there are games still going on that late, it's your game. So you're not already engaged in your game earlier in the day and you're watching stuff that maybe is, half a world away from your emotion. If you're on the West Coast, the games that those of us in the Eastern and Central time zones stay up late to watch are your games. So if you're like an Arizona State fan, UCLA fan, well, it doesn't matter how late you're staying up because it's the game that you were going to watch even if it was 3 a.m. But the last point I want to make, because we've got a viewer who lives in Maui and was sharing this with me the other day, because I never thought about this. Some of you live in Hawaii. The Hawaiian lifestyle, when it comes to college football, has to be amazing. Think about this. If you're in Toccoa, Georgia, think about the Hawaiian lifestyle. The Hawaiian college football fan takes a 6 a.m. kickoff for the noon games on the East Coast. They then get into the second window and McDonald's is still serving breakfast. And then the late games start in the very, very early afternoon and they're done. By 4 or 5 o'clock, they're done. The sun has not set and all of college football is done. So think about watching an entire day, including the late games, and then heading out for dinner. Not even a late dinner, just dinner. I would not get used to that in year one. But if I moved out there by year 2, I think I would swear by the Hawaiian viewership experience. Oh, and also, I hear the scenery is pretty good. And I probably would just never come back. Maybe if one of you leased some private aviation to me. Otherwise, I would never come back.